Hello and welcome to our second interview of the day on James Bond Radio's 30 Days of Spectre. My name's Tom Sears and I'm joined by my good buddy Chris Wright. Say hello, Chris.
Hello.
Very nice. Now today we are talking to Agent Golden Voice himself, Mr. Simon Woolley. Are you excited about the prospect of talking to Mr. Simon Woolley, Chris?
I'm always excited about talking to Simon Woolley.
Absolutely.
Yes, especially when it...
we were both going to do one and we stopped each other. You go first. I'm getting you to go first.
I reckon it'll be the same thing. Go on, you go first.
I was just going to say how it's always nice to talk to Simon Woolley, provided he keeps his bottom covered up underneath his clothes rather than exposed like in his competition entry for the On the Tracks event. Yeah,
and I think when he arrived on the Tracks event, I think secretly it was like bottom exposure for the full night, but you know, he was sitting down for most of it. So yeah, it's a dangerous game to play. I think that one.
It was. What was your joke?
I think it was probably that
one. Very nice. Okay, coolio. Right then. So without any further ado, let's crack on and chat to Simon.
Welcome to our next interview on 30 Days of Spectre, James Bond Radio. With us today, we have none other than Agent Golden Voice himself, Mr. Simon Woolley. How are you doing, Simon?
Hello, Chris. How you doing? Right.
Lovely, jubbly. And with us is, of course, our good pal, Mr. Tom Sears. How are you doing, Tom?
All right, fellas. How's it going?
Not too bad.
Tom.
Good stuff. So we will kick things off, Simon, with the quickfire questions because you know, obviously you're what we would call a cornerstone member of the JBR family. You're always showing up on the social medias and sending in videos of your naked bottom and getting involved and things like that. So I imagine most people who listen will know of you. But what we want to do is give them a good sort of snapshot of what your taste in Bond is. So we'll do the quickfire questions, and the very first one is, Mr. Simon Woolley, what is your favourite Bond film?
You see. This week or ever?
Ever, overall.
Yeah, it's got to be Casino, really. I mean, I've thought hard about this, but it keeps coming back to Casino. So that's it, really.
Very nice. And what is it about that you like?
I just thought it was when that whole hard reboot came through. I've got to say I was amongst the doubters because I didn't really like Daniel Craig before, and I thought, no way. But the whole thing it's a boring answer, isn't it? It'd be much better if I said Diamonds or something. But no, it's just that whole coolness stripped away, no nonsense. Just the most brilliant contrast after that film, which shall not be named, that went before.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Currently, is there a different favourite?
Hard at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty into Diamonds at the minute because that was. I think I've posted this on the blog before, but that was actually the very first Bond film I ever saw with my dad, Christmas Day 1978. And I've just got a thing for Diamonds. It's a shit film, but I do love it. You know what I mean? It's like, well, not the best film, but your favourite. And I've just got a big thing for that movie.
Nice, good stuff. So, question number 2 then, Simon. What would you say is your favourite James Bond book?
Well, you see, I still haven't properly started them. That's the shocking revelation.
Good Lord.
I know. I've been working my way through the young Bonds. I thought I'd do it in sort of chronological order.
Okay.
So I'm currently right in the middle of Shoot to Kill and enjoying that. They're sort of floating around somewhere over the Atlantic. But I've not actually read. I think I did read a Fleming one when I was about 14, but I wasn't sort of old enough to get it, I think. You know what I mean? So I've got that pleasure awaiting me.
Have you read all the Higsons?
Yeah. They're all nailed. Yeah.
And what's your favourite Higson young Bond book?
I think it's probably. Oh God! Now I can't remember. What's the one in Sardinia?
Blood Fever.
Yeah, Blood Fever. Yeah, with the mosquitoes and everything. I think that's excellent.
Yeah, that's my favourite too. That scene at the beginning where he's sneaking over the rooftops is brilliant.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and I do like the dam scene as well. That I think there's potential there for a movie.
Yeah. Very nice. Next question, possibly the most difficult and hardest question in more ways than one. Simon Woolley, who is your favourite Bond girl?
Oh God! See, I've thought. I mean, I keep gravitating back to one of 3. Gemma Arterton, severely underused. Severely underused. Sophie Marceau, which I know will produce. Oh yes, And then I wish I could say Monica Bellucci, but there was just not enough there. So I don't know. We could be dropping back to Fiona Volpe, you see.
Oh,
interesting. He likes a bit of ginge.
Nice. Lots of good choices there. So
there's plenty of others. Yeah.
If you had to choose between one in terms of, say, one that would get your blood boiling and one in terms of character, who would you come up with?
Oh man, my wife is about 2 doors away. What am I supposed to say? I am big in the Sophie Marceau camp. It has to be said. I mean, yeah, we're going to go Sophie.
Excellent.
Very nice.
Yeah, that's nice.
Good stuff. So it's Chris's question now. I was going to rudely interrupt and do 2 in a row, but I'm going to be quiet.
So question number 4 then, Simon.
Do you know what? These are much, much harder than you think. Because I have actually answered these on the blog about 1.5 years ago, and my answers are probably completely different. But it's really hard when you put on the spot.
Well, I'm just going to make it even harder. Simon Woolley, who is your favourite James Bond villain?
Drax.
Ooh.
That's easy.
Oh,
nice. I just love that guy. It's the way he does it with such understated cool. Those suits are just awesome. And his beard and the tash, and it's just, and he's got such great lines, the cucumber sandwiches and make sure some harm comes to him, and those dogs and Drax every time. That's
incredible, because there was absolutely no hesitation from you there. That was it, straight out of the gate.
Yeah, it's what sometimes when you ask it just comes to mind. Bang, Bond villain.
I'm a big fan of Drax. I'm a big fan of Drax. He for me is like pretty much the most, taking over the whole world, or at least destroying almost the whole world. Yeah. The craziest plan, the craziest villain. And I'm a big fan of Drax. I think he's a bit underrated sometimes.
Have we really had a complete world destruction domination plot since Moonraker?
I doubt it.
I suppose we haven't, have we? When we think about it, I suppose GoldenEye was the Banks. Tomorrow Never Dies was World War III. So I suppose that's the closest we've had, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's just sort of, not in terms of megalomaniac, single-purpose villain.
Absolutely.
It's a trivia question.
Inspector.
Yeah, but he wasn't world destruction, was it?
No, he wasn't.
Just
no.
Control of everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a trivia question for you. In which movie does Drax appear alongside Sean?
I don't know the answer to that.
And Ron Perlman.
Oh, I know the answer to that.
Well then.
It's a very, very good one as well.
I'll give you one more clue, Tom, with Christian Slater.
That was his first feature.
Correct.
I'm lost. With the Christian Slater, I was going to say Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, but maybe I'm wrong.
Incorrect.
It's The Name of the Rose, cracking film.
It is, Chris. It is, yeah.
Very nice. Good stuff. Next question, Mr. Simon Woolley. Who is your favourite James Bond actor?
Daniel. It is.
Again, straight out of the gate. Yeah.
I grew up with Rog, and I remember the confusion when I first saw a Sean film, and I was like, what? Who's this other fella? And then for years I was labouring under the misapprehension that George Lazenby was shit and that he got fired, and that all just confused me so much. But then, obviously I hooked up since about the late 70s and understood what was going on. But Danny Boy for me, it's just he's got it. He's got it. But I think it'll change. It'll change with time, as these things do. Otherwise, we wouldn't have anything to talk about, would we?
Yeah,
that's true, definitely. So, next question then: what would you say is your favourite scene in the whole of the series?
Oh God,
toughie this one.
It is. It's so hard, isn't it? To be honest, I wish you'd told me you were going to ask me these questions, but I would have spent weeks researching it now. But it's good that you're not asking me just straight like that. I've got to say, I am very, very fond of the alligator hopping scene in Live and Let Die.
Good shout.
It's just instantly memorable. And what's that now? What's that one with It's involved that there's a wave, like a big wave.
Oh, stop it! I'm going to end the call immediately.
No. Yeah, I'm going to go with alligators. It's just one of my favorites. I recently wrote a little blog post on that as well. Alligators versus sharks, who would win? And the alligators. I'm going to go for that. Just instantly memorable. It's just something from my childhood. I remember that just being, God, this guy's awesome. And then when I found out it was all being done for real, and I've seen those videos of the guy, actually doing it and getting bitten, so cool.
Yeah, man. They just
do that in a safari suit,
They don't make them like that anymore, do they? Absolutely. That is a banger of a scene for sure. So next question then is, where did it all start for you? What's your earliest memory of Bond? Who got you into it, if anybody? What's the beginning?
Well, of course, it was my dad. It always is, isn't it? It's everyone's dad, I'm sure of it. And it was Christmas Day 1978. I cannot remember anything before that. See, because the summer before had been Star Wars and Spy, and I can remember lots of Star Wars stuff going on. I'm not sure I went and saw it in the movies because I was only 6. But it was seeing Diamonds Are Forever with my dad around the family TV, Christmas. Those are the days when 20 million people would watch the Bond film because no one had seen it. Only in the cinema about 5 years before.
What sort of effect do you think that had on you watching it? Do you remember it vividly, and were there any particular scenes?
I mean, you know the bit where bizarrely the woman in the cage turns into a gorilla, which I still don't understand. No idea. And she was found living in the wilds of Nairobi, South Africa, which I thought was a particularly excellent continuity error. I can just remember being scared absolutely shitless by that scene, and I seem to remember thinking, God, Bond movies are so grown up and so scary. And it was just a big deal because I was allowed to stay up late till 9:30 or 10 o'clock or something. It was just crazy. I just remember it being like the most mature thing I'd ever done. And because my dad was into it, it was just the coolest.
It's a cool little father-son bond going on.
Yeah. I think that's so common. I was at the pictures yesterday. I went and saw Spectre again. And there were at least 4 or 5 dad and lad couplings in the queue buying tickets. And I was just thinking, this young lad here, this could be his very first one at the movies. Big moment,
Definitely.
So really, every Christmas Day is a double celebration for you. You've got the Christmas celebrations itself, but then you've got the genesis of your Bondianness.
Yep, coming up 37 years ago. My God.
Good God.
So those are the days, you see. I mean, Diamonds was 71, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah? And this was 78. So you had to wait 7 years before you got to see, inverted commas, the new Bond movie if you'd missed it in the pictures.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Unbelievable.
So last quick fire question then, Simon. What is your most favourite Bond location that you have visited, and what Bond location that you haven't would you most like to see?
Well, I'm going to take the second one first. It's stupidly easy, but I'd love to go to Rome. I've always wanted to go to Rome and never just got around to it because it's almost too close. But I've actually been incredibly lucky in terms of locations I have been to. I mean, just off the top of my head, sort of vaguely geographically, San Francisco, Rio, the Amazon rainforest, Madagascar, most of the European ones, Iceland, including the infamous Invisible Lake. I've been to a lot of these places in Hong Kong. I haven't been to Japan. I'd like to do that. But the number one place I have visited is definitely Udaipur in India, where they did all the Octopussy stuff.
Nice.
It's wicked. It's wicked. Went and had a brilliant meal on the Island Palace, which is like a really smart hotel.
Was it full of women?
Yes, it was, but that's because they'd heard I was coming.
Did you arrive by crocodile?
If only. I saw that crocodile in the Bond in Motion Museum on Spectre premiere day. It's really shit, isn't it? Almost as bad as the stuffed tiger. But but Kamal Khan's the place where they get all the action and where he's imprisoned is the Monsoon Palace, which is up on a hill just outside Udaipur. And we got a trip up there in one of those little tuk-tuks, like the scooter things. And we had to stop twice on the way up because literally otherwise the engine would have blown up with the heat with 2 passengers on board.
Wow.
Fantastic. We got up there for sunset and it was epic, absolutely epic. It's an amazing place and well worth a visit.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Right then, Golden Voice, it's time to talk Spectre. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I've even got some notes.
Oh, bloody hell, here we go.
Yeah.
So, question number one is, Mr. Simon Woolley, are you a Spectre lover, a hater, or somewhere in the middle?
Well, to quote the words of Tom Sears, it's a load of shit, isn't it? No, not really. No. Do you know, I've vacillated so much because I think the problem was I so wanted it to be the greatest, the best, the most wonderful, and so on, which I'm almost certain it isn't. In fact, I'm certain it isn't. But I so wanted it to be so good that I've been left a little bit disappointed. But on each occasion that I've watched it, and I've now seen it only 3 times, admittedly, which is less than you boys, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm at 5 at the moment.
Yeah, I think by 5 I might have gone over the hump and it might be doing my head in. But each time I have seen better things to it and more to it. I wouldn't say I've loved it more and more each time, because I think seeing it straight out of the gate on premiere night was just a really special event. But I don't think it was the right time to appreciate it fully as a film. Second time round, you see, I thought, I actually got serious problems with this. Third time round, I actually enjoyed it more. I just relaxed into it a bit more.
Yeah.
I think that's the tricky thing, isn't it? Is where Spectre at the moment is under this humongous microscope because it's the new one. Do you know what I mean? And everybody's got this ridiculously high set of standards. I think, you know, all of us have this ridiculously high set of standards. And a lot of us go into a film wanting something particular, and when it doesn't do that particular thing, it's a disappointment. So for me, perfect example of that is Skyfall. What I wanted from Skyfall was what I ultimately ended up getting in Spectre. You know, I wanted the whole, you know, secret organization thing to be a part of it and all that rest of it, and it just was its own sort of standalone little thing at the time. And and I was just like, that wasn't quite what I wanted, you know. And I genuinely believe that once you just let something settle for a bit, even after several years, like for me with Quantum, I'm just at this point having a more of appreciation for that. Like sometimes it takes years, and then it doesn't have the pressure of being the new one, and then you can actually look at it from a sort of a wider angle and appreciate it for what it is, you know. I
think that's right. Yeah. I mean, what I'd say, and I was going to actually, it was going to be my grand finale, but I'm going to say it now because I'll forget. Is that what the issue for me is? I think this is a damn good Bond movie, but I don't think it's that good a film.
Huh.
So explain on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, Bond movies, you know, obviously they're massively commercially driven, but equally a very large proportion of the Bond ethos when you're producing a new film has to be for people who are in some fashion collecting the films. Now, what you know, we call from time to time the casual fan who sort of remembers there was a volcano once, and was that the one where the X, Y, and Z happened? There are enough of those elements repeated to give little echoes, and I've got to say, I think, in terms of nods to the past, I mean, you did 50 minutes on nods to the past a couple of days ago, not all of which I think are nods to the past. I think there are some things you just can only do so many times. But I just think that it just got over noddy, not in the ham-fisted way that certain other films have, those which shall not be named, for example. But I just felt that I just felt constantly distracted by kind of over-analysing it, going, oh, look, there's that, oh, there's that, and so on and so forth. And do you know what? I was listening to the Scores of Bond Part 2 back about 2 weeks ago, which I think is episode 23, something like that. And do you know what? The mighty Tom Sears said at that point, you know, I don't want all these calls back to the past in films. It's just distracting.
I know.
Whether it's music or whether it's things. And you know, it's been interesting. Over the last year, I've heard you, Tom, in particular, this isn't a criticism, it's just a thing. You've got more saying, do you know what? I want to see those call-outs. And we had a hell of a lot of them in Spectre. And as a Bond movie, I think that kind of brings a certain structure within the universe. But I think that could be the problem, that we've now got Bond films are hooked to a formula in such a way that if they genuinely become an exciting movie in 2015 or 2018 or whatever the next one is, if they're a genuine movie, if they're as it were an event like Inception or something, people are going to go, huh, that's not a Bond film, and it's going to get panned. It doesn't make a load of money, and Eon lose their cash cow. That, I think, is the problem.
Do you know what? It just shows what a fickle bastard I am. But
yes,
B, with the little nods, I feel like they're especially after seeing, if you'd have told me there were all these nods in Spectre beforehand, I'd have been really worried, because I feel like in the past it's been just shoehorned in there so we can all go, oh look, there's that bit from that one. You know what I mean? Yeah. And for me, like the one I always mention is Strawberry Fields on the bed covered in oil, and I'm just like, why? Like that is such a standout moment in Goldfinger. Why, like, and just reproducing that is just it just feels stuck in there for the sake of it for me, that one. And it doesn't do it anywhere near as well as the original one. But for me with Spectre, and of course all those ones in Dawn of the Day as well, but for me in Spectre, those nods are just subtle enough that it's just like, it's a nice little wink rather than a, hey, look at this. Do you know what I mean?
And I think it might be because we've all been speculating for too long, that we've all been, as it were, constructing something in our minds. And that even if we went in relatively spoiler-free, and I went in having seen the trailers, but not seen the scripts and avoided, bullshit forums and so on, I actually just felt it was just a bit, almost as though we'd spoiled it for ourselves a little bit somehow. Now that may come with time, and actually, I want to wait and watch it at home and slow some things down and look at things again. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
think it's going to take time. Next time, it's going to mean giving up JBR, I think. I know. I might give up JBR and then have a mass listen back after the next one comes out. I think I'm going to keep out of the naughty room.
You won't be able to do it, Woolley. I know you.
Well, it's a mission. It's a mission. But I would love to be able to just literally go into the cinema, knowing nothing except the poster and going, right, hit me. It's really hard, though, isn't it? And that's one of the things that these days it is so hard because it's an industry. And I just felt I still feel there was just too much in those trailers.
Yeah, I think that there was I feel like they did it okay. There's definitely been, again, I watched the first full trailer and that was it. I didn't watch any of the others. I watched it, I think I only watched it once as well, if I remember right. But like, for example, I remember going to see into the cinema and seeing the trailer for the recent Terminator film. And I mean, they put every plot twist in that thing. And I was like,
5 minutes long.
And I was like, what the hell is that all about? There's no point in watching that film anymore.
See, this is the thing. You see, I think that movies, increasingly, like event movies, like Bonds and Terminators and Star Wars, they seem to have kept fairly quiet. I don't know quite how they've done it, but it's almost as though the industry surrounding them is as important as the film itself. And so it's all about the chat rooms, the Facebook, the podcasts about James Bond. Do you know what I mean? It's all like the derivative industries from it, which do generate so much hype and buzz and spending. And lunatics like us will go and see it 4 or 5 times while it's still at the pictures. I do think there's a danger. And I've got a radical solution. I'd like to see them go back to annual Bond films and make 4 in a batch and make them short. Hour and a quarter each. Almost, I mean, that's the thing, you see. If you watch something like, and it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I've been watching Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And the production quality on that is exceptional.
So what you're saying...
Take shortcuts, because I'd almost like it to become... Go on.
You want to see Bond on TV, do you?
Almost.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah. I mean, it's just, you could spend 350 million quid on 2.5 hours of entertainment. If you had that budget and just turned it into some sort of hybrid event, something that was, had premium content, and I don't know, I haven't thought it through, but I just think that this model of the blockbuster Bond, I've called it a cash cow for Eon. I just don't think it can go on forever. I think it's just a bubble waiting to burst. Every Bond can't be the biggest since the last one and the biggest money and more and more and more. It just becomes bloated.
We're
missing something.
I've got 2 thoughts about that. First of all, that's been said since the dawn of the whole series, that it's got do you know what I mean? It's since Thunderball, they were saying that, oh, this is over. This is, getting ridiculous now and all that kind of stuff. So on the one hand, I think if he's lasted 50 plus years, then he's going to last another 50 plus. But at the same time, what a lot of people would probably say these days as well is that television is way better than movies these days. You get things like Breaking Bad, which is just an absolutely phenomenal series. Yeah. And the amount of movies you go and see where you come out going, do you know what, that was just utter toss, and I've just wasted 2.5 hours of my day. And the amount of decent TV that's around these days far outweighs the decent movies. You know, you probably get 2 or 3 decent films a year these days because they're just trotting out so much bollocks. So maybe you've got a point there.
But I mean, it's this thing. I mean, you know, a good movie in 2.5 hours, that's, you know, 2-3 episodes of a box set TV series. You know, you've got to do a lot in that time, and the plot has got to be fantastic and original. It's got to be epic to really, really float the boat and stand the test of time. Sure, a really good Bond movie will last us for 2 or 3 years, but will we be revisiting it going, oh, do you remember that? Like Inception or Memento or Sixth Sense or something like that. You know what I mean? It's not a truly epic movie, and never will be in my book, while they stick to formula.
That's interesting. I can guarantee that I will be revisiting this film forever. So there's definitely one in that camp.
But isn't that just because we're tragic fanboys? And we would even if it was shit.
Well, Die Another Day. Tom's only seen twice.
Yeah, I have only seen that twice. And there are, I don't know, I think there are films, like I've often said recently, like the end of the Roger period is my weakest area of knowledge, purely because they're the ones I've just watched. You know, you have that moment where you go, I'm going to watch a Bond. Yeah. You get your whole collection out and you're like, right, flip through, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Probably not that one. And the end of the Roger period has just been in that sort of box for me for a long time, which is why I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into them, actually.
Not one of those late Roger films, not one of them from, say, Moonraker onwards, it is ever going to be described as a genuinely great movie in sort of terms of 100 best films. I don't mean Bond films.
But does that matter? I don't think that matters if they're offering fun and entertainment, and each of those films that you mentioned are someone's favourite Bond film. And I think that alone is enough to justify having those films around. And obviously certain things change with time. But
don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I want all these films forever. You know, of course I do. I want to be able to go and watch them in all sorts of different ways. I want to be able to watch one ironically. I want to watch one, you know, seriously. But here's one of my angles that I think I've just got a real issue with this week of all weeks. Back in 1962, 3, 4, when they were making films about the Cold War, okay, it was done with a sort of light edge and so on, but that was a real thing. That was, you know, Cuban Missile Crisis. That was Days from Destruction. People were genuinely shit scared of the Soviet Union, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where are we now? 2015. The world is melting down because of a nameless, faceless, genuinely terrifying threat. Now, that's not someone undergoing surveillance and distributing dodgy drugs and, you know, and so on and so forth. There's really serious stuff that's scaring people in the world. And there's this argument, isn't there, that James Bond was one of the things that kept Britain together through those dark post-war days and gave us something to dream of. That's us, the Brits. Now that Bond has gone effectively global, I don't think it'll ever revisit that. And I don't think a major media organization like Sony with their, or whoever takes it over, with their recent experience of shall we say, interaction through the, you know, with hacks and attacks and all the rest of it, I don't think they're ever going to take on ISIS, for example. But, you know, here we are living in this sort of fantasy world. Why aren't we having something that's a little bit more grounded?
Well,
or actually,
I would say
scary.
I would say though the plot of Spectre is very, very applicable to what's going on. You know, look at Ed Snowden. Do you know what I mean? And all the mass surveillance. That's precisely what Spectre were doing. And at the same time, the whole backdrop of what was happening in the world at the time was, you know, bombs going off in Cape Town and all over the place, which is again precisely what.
Yeah, that bit was quite interesting. And it's like, you know, one I thought was fascinating when they said, do you remember they said industrial explosion in Tunisia?
Mm.
Yeah. Do you remember those massive explosions? There were 2 massive explosions 2 weeks apart in China.
Mm. Yeah.
Those huge industrial explosions. We never heard anything else about those. That struck me as such a Bondian event. You know, someone holding the world to ransom and demonstrating the power of a space weapon. I just thought that's a GoldenEye strike.
Yeah.
And that happened. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Going to go back to that TV point, though, my feeling is that all that stuff about surveillance has been done better by spooks. They've done that spy, sneaky computer stuff on a vastly smaller budget on the small screen. It's all been kind of done. I am a bit concerned that there's sort of some running out of steam. I'm being a bit of a wet blanket here. Do you know, I really like this film.
Do you know what? Chris, Wooley's saying he wants to give up JBR. He thinks Bond's bloated. He doesn't want any more films. He wants to give up the whole thing. What's going on here?
I'm not
it's a grumpy Sunday, isn't it? Yeah, I'm having a grumpy day. Yeah,
that's what it must be. So just going back to Spectre then. Okay,
yeah.
So your first viewing experience, what was it like? What was the atmosphere like? Was it buzzing? And what was your first thoughts after seeing it on your first viewing?
Well, I had plenty of room to spread out because, of course, you two didn't turn up. But that was fine. I had some excellent seats in the.
We were waiting for you outside.
I know, and I missed you outside. I know. Yeah, no, it was brilliant being in there with loads of JVR Army all around the front of the Royal Circle. It was a really special event after that brilliant party the night before, and a great day out in Covent Garden around lunchtime, meeting lots of new people and old friends. It was brilliant. I mean, the whole buzz around the whole thing was fantastic. And when the whole of Odeon Leicester Square erupted in applause when the gun barrel sequence comes on at the beginning, you know, everyone wanting that so much. It was fantastic. The whole thing was real tingle time. It was brilliant. I sat there with my brother, who's also a long-time Bond fan, and we had a brilliant night out. It was a fantastic occasion. There's no two ways about it.
Very nice. Excellent. Cool stuff. So, okay, so you've got some quite mixed feelings about Spectre then. So break it down for us. What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it?
Okay, what I did like about it was some of the sweeping cinematography. Fantastic. I thought it was beautifully filmed. There were some really lovely little points which I don't know how long it took them to get it right, but you know, all the car chase drifting I thought was beautifully done. I hope you noticed the way whoever drove that DB10 round the corner and missed the motorbikes. That was a hell of a corner they took. Hinks and his Jaguar smashed up the motorbike, you'll notice. Mm-hmm. That was beautifully done. I did love those big sweeping shots down the admittedly foggy lake in Austria. And it was just beautifully shot. I really did think that. I'm with you, Tom. I think that Skyfall's overrated in terms of its feel. I think it's cold. I think it's not as beautiful, with the exception of Shanghai. But I did think there was a lot of very beautiful, big, sweeping setting shots. Pre-titles in particular, fabulous. Mm-hmm. Absolutely superb. What else did I really like? I liked and I didn't like, because I can see there are dangers of it setting a precedent, but I like the MI6 home team, what I've seen described elsewhere as the Scooby Gang, working together. I did quite like it.
Very nice.
Sneaking around the Hildebrandt rarities and all that. I did like that. There was a bit of a weird thing where Moneypenny disappeared and then popped up from nowhere. I didn't quite understand where she was towards the end.
Maybe she needed to pop off for a quick one.
Yeah, could be. She didn't have a powder blue onesie on, so that mind you, that one there's a thought. Naomi Harris in a powder blue one. Anyway, moving on. So some big things. The things that really did for me though were, it's cliche, but it's the bit after the torture scene. It's from that torture scene onwards. I just think it lost shape very, very severely. I've got to say, I think I mentioned on Facebook a day or two ago, Chris, you stole my thunder. I don't know where you got this plan from, whether it was your idea or something you'd read somewhere else. But this business about, is Bond really awake when he wakes up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it just seemed to shift so much, didn't it?
Yes. Was that your idea, or was that something you'd read?
No, someone had sent a link about someone. I think Joey Lipter was the JBR person, but he'd sent a link from EW.com. And some guy had done a write-up there, but he didn't do it from a serious thing. I think he basically said, he'd mentioned one little line, and then that got me thinking, and then just.
It did. It really. It just threw me, and it took me out of the film quite a lot. And it was so. I mean, the way they escaped from the Praetor base, it was just like a really, really good run of Call of Duty. It was pop, 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 one shot each. It was silly. Yeah. And it did take me out of the film. Now, I do have a theory that's more complex still. You know the gecko on the screen before the cat? Why did the filmmakers, why did Mendes choose to show us a gecko?
In the novel,
it can't be random.
No, in the novel, You Only Live Twice, when Bond exits his hideout just before he goes to see Blofeld in the castle, he hears a gecko outside. So it might have been alluding to that.
Yeah, a little reference to that. Yeah, I did a bit of hunting around, and the gecko, apparently in some cultures, I think it was in Australian Aboriginal culture or something, is like a sort of spirit animal guiding you into the land of dreams.
Oh.
Now, I really hope that it's not one big dream sequence and we wake up again back on the torture chamber. But it did have a feel of all that. It was just so peculiar after that point, and it just lost its way. And there were some weird things. You know when Blofeld fades in, you can't quite hear what he's talking about. He says something about a man can watch himself being disemboweled. I think this is some of the dialogue that comes from Colonel's son, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I actually jotted a few things down that he said. I think I've got it word for word. He says to Bond at one point, or he might be talking to Madeline, he says, "A man lives inside his head. That's where the seat of his soul is." Yeah, which is all to do with this business about taking the eyes out and so on.
Mm.
And then when he's about to do the second drilling, when he reveals who he is, he says, "Now the man inside your head is Ernst Stavro Blofeld." And this just struck me as really peculiar, because until that point, we haven't heard Blofeld's name and so on. And then we're told explicitly that the man inside Bond's head is Blofeld. Almost as though he's not real, as though he is a figment of Bond having a breakdown or something.
Interesting. Do you know what?
I just can't unpack it yet.
I think the whole... If Bond 25 kicks off and he's still in that chair, or immediately after that chair, I think it will be I would be excited by it, because purely for the reason it was like, shit, didn't see this coming, I never dreamed they'd actually go with that. And here they are. They're definitely mixing up the formula again and doing something different.
Yeah.
And when I mentioned the formula, I think that's where there's a disconnect with a lot of people over Spectre.
Yeah.
Because in order to make a classic style Bond film, which is precisely what they've done, there is a formula that goes with that.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And by its very nature, when you do something that sticks to a formula, the other half are going to go, oh, it's just more of the same old shit. Well, okay, but you please one party, you please the other. So that's besides it. But I think
I would like to think there's a plan. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a funny one. I don't think for a minute they will actually go with that story, because it would just confuse the casual moviegoer, and they'll be like, what? But it's an intriguing one nonetheless. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was the one point when I was watching it yesterday where I heard another line when Madeline comes over to him and leans over him, and completely, I think, out of character. And is it the first time it's ever been said to Bond, "I love you"?
Moneypenny, you only live twice.
I was just about to say that.
Okay. Yeah, right, in quote marks. But it is extraordinarily out of the blue. Yeah, it is out of the blue, though. I feel it's very strange the way she just comes and says that. And she's taking the watch off him, and Blofeld says, "So, does he know her or not?" And he looks at her with this faraway look and says, "I'd know you anywhere." And I thought, when I was watching that, I know what happens. I know he does know it's Madeline, but I thought at that point, watching it yesterday, God, what if he's seeing Vesper's face? What if he's actually not seeing Madeline? What if he has actually had his recognition system in his brain ploughed up by those needles?
Do you know what needs to happen?
I thought that
here,
could be
Simon
quite
Woolley?
interesting.
I tell you what needs to happen. You need to write an alternate universe Bond novel.
We'll see. Yeah.
Definitely.
They had their science about right there, because there's that thing that Blofeld said. Did you hear that bit where he says, if we stimulate the right part of the fusiform gyrus? Did you read that bit or hear that bit?
Yeah.
That's
yeah. And I did Google that, and that is spot on. There's this bit at the base, and it's even in the right part of the brain, right down at the base of the brain, which is the recognition system. I mean, it's at that point that it goes completely screwy in terms of believability, or would it really happen? Because if you get drilled in your brain, you're having a brain hemorrhage, you're dead. But that's where it becomes a Bond movie, if you like. But as a movie, just as a story, I just felt that the plot went to pieces from that point on. And I sat back and just enjoyed it, and it's good action romp, but I couldn't take it seriously as a piece of narrative cinema.
So taking everything into account, basically, your thoughts while watching it, and your overall thoughts since seeing it 2 or 3 times, How would you say Spectre compares to Skyfall and amongst the other Daniel Craigs?
Yeah. In terms of ranking?
Yeah.
Give us your 4-film rundown from best to worst.
Yeah. Well, best still Casino. Second best, I still think Quantum, which is, I think, underrated.
Good film.
Then it is probably too early to say, but I think probably Skyfall and Spectre fourth at the moment. But it may change as we
Interesting.
I can only really give it sort of. I'm at about 5.5, 6 out of 10 at the moment, because I just feel because it's got this sense of having been created by committee, and whether that's to do with my preparation for it through listening to too much bloody podcast and getting too excited, or whether it's just the way it was put together, or something. There's just something that doesn't hold together right for me. Is it because they're stuck in this kind of universe and they have to have continuity and we can't have standalone adventures anymore? Is it because of other movies and superhero stuff and we're comparing it with Mission Impossible and so on? I don't know. I'm one of those people who would really be in favour of the next actor coming in, doing it as a period piece, black and white, even going way back to the original setting, 40s, 50s, such that, gadgets were really cool that were briefcases and stuff. Do you know what I mean? And being done almost like Mad Men.
Interesting.
But that's just me blathering.
Do you know what I think, though? I think there is something to be said for the fact that this film might just not be your cup of tea. For example, when you look at Skyfall, so many people loved that movie. And for me, I came out being like, do you know what? And I actually said the very words. I was like, it's just something missing in there for me that just didn't hit my buttons, And it's, fair enough. A lot of people love it. And for me, it was just like, it was okay. It was an all right Bond film for me. And so I think there's a lot to be said for the fact that, people have different tastes and different things. Yeah. And it just might be this time around. It wasn't tweaking your funny bits as much as the previous ones did.
Yeah. And can I just go back to I know they're boring in a way, but plot holes. 2 things which are very similar. Why was Hinks trying to kill Bond on the train?
Why was Hinks trying to kill Bond on the train? Because he was on his way to see Blofeld, I suppose.
But Blofeld is a megalomaniac who was desperate to reveal who he was and that he was Blofeld and to show James the meteorite and everything else. So why would he order his henchmen to kill the guy before he got there? He was already going to his secret base.
Maybe he just wanted him duffed up.
Duffed up. He was going to throw him out the train. He was going to kill him. So, I mean, that confused me. And the other one, which I think I mentioned on Facebook the other day, is when the goons take Bond to the old MI6 at the end, hooded and handcuffed and everything. If they're taking him there to deliver him to Blofeld, why, when he busts out and shoots them and breaks out of his handcuffs and everything, why are there bloody great red arrows on the wall showing him the way to get there if they were going to take him to Blofeld anyway? Because
Blofeld knows how good Bond is and how much of an adversary he is, and that undoubtedly he'd escape his menial goons.
Do you know what though? No, that to me that's what the goons meant to do, would be take him into that room with the writing on the wall, put him down on his knees, take the hood off, and then leave him to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So they died in vain.
Yeah,
they nearly finished their mission.
Yeah.
Well, nearly, but not quite. Yeah.
And what's with the bulletproof glass at the end that Blofeld's standing behind? You've got a trashed MI6 that's ripped to pieces, absolutely shredded. Why is there a room with bulletproof glass there?
Well, no, because Blofeld obviously installed that himself. I always imagine, because the bomb is behind it. He's not going to just go somewhere like without protecting himself, is he? He knows Bond's going to be there. He knows Bond's going to shoot him. Why wouldn't he install some bulletproof glass?
Yeah, we're getting to the point where we could just plot hole away, couldn't we? There is an interesting bit there. I don't know if you noticed. It's a bit like the bit in Silence of the Lambs where the prison bars almost disappear when they film from Clarice back to Hannibal Lecter. When they're facing each other through the glass.
Yeah.
And you get the reflections, and you get Blofeld reflected in the glass, and it very nearly fits exactly on top of Bond's head. And so the two are kind of merged into one. And that's what made me think again about the man who lives inside his head. The man inside your head is Ernst Stavro Blofeld. I just think there's something going on there that we don't know about. Whether it will be developed or whether it will just be constantly left as a thing will, just never get resolved, I don't know. But there's something weird about that whole thing.
Well, that
just haven't
really,
worked it out yet.
That kind of leads us on to the final and probably the biggest question that we have, which is, Simon Woolley, Bond 25, what are your predictions and what would you like to see?
I've got a funny feeling that Daniel Craig's going to walk away.
So we won't see him in Bond 25.
Yeah, I think it'll be one of those great disconnects in the series, and I think it might be that we will always be saying, God, what would have happened if Daniel Craig had done 25? Just like if George had done Diamonds. I've just got a feeling that's not what I want to happen. I want to see him come back because I think he's bloody good, and I want to see. What I do want to see though is a drastic change in direction, and they've got to get a seriously original plot. It can't be, world mastermind, I'm going to face you down, I'll do a torture scene. We've got to move away from that. Bond needs some serious refreshing. But Tom, that may just be what you were saying a minute ago about my cup of tea. I just feel it needs something completely fresh. I don't think it'll happen though. I think they'll roll out more of the same, because when you sell a film and it makes $200-300 million just by banging it out and all the publicity caravan, I don't think they will change very much because it works clearly.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, we've had 3 films now pre-Spectre where it's all very dark and serious and very brooding. Yeah. And then we've had one film that's more fun, basically. And I feel like when you compare Skyfall to Spectre, those 2 films are like night and day as far as I'm concerned. And I feel like it doesn't necessarily mean the next one has to be the same tone as Spectre. It can go dark again. And if we do get the Madeline/Tracy storyline next time and that whole thing, then it's got to go darker on some level. But for me, I don't know. For me, the Spectre is the refresh that I've wanted since Daniel started, since Casino, so maybe it is just a case of different strokes for different folks. And again, with the whole plot hole thing, I mean, it's tough to find any Bond film that doesn't have some plot holes in. I mean, we've said that often, when you look at Goldfinger, for example, which is an undisputed classic for most people, Bond doesn't do anything of value in that whole film. Every woman he comes in contact with, apart from Dink, ends up dead. And it's the same thing. You could say the same about Raiders of the Lost Ark, whereby the whole story Indiana Jones didn't matter to that story because they'd have just opened the Ark and all the Nazis would have died automatically without him being involved at all. Yeah,
they wouldn't have found it though.
Would they not?
In terms of, sorry, mate, but in terms of plotting, could you say that? I'm just looking at my shelf of DVDs. Could you say that what you've just said? Oh, it didn't really work, and Could you say that about Memento, Inception, or The Usual Suspects? All of which aren't just good movies; they are great movies which will stand the test of time. They're not only beautiful to look at, but they stand watching and rewatching and rewatching, and you find more in them every time. And I'm not seeing that. And with the amount of money and cash and talent that's thrown at these movies, I really think it's about time that there was a Bond movie, which actually people were talking about being a great movie, a really great movie. People said that about Skyfall, and I never bought it. But
quite a few people are saying it about Spectre as well. Like we said, I guess it's certain one person's view of a great movie is different to someone else's, isn't it?
I think there's a lot to be said for that as well. But at the same time, some people would look at the Bond formula and say, oh, they're just trotting out the same old shit over and over again. But at the end of the day, formulas exist for a reason, because they work. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, Casino comes along, completely reinvents the whole thing, and it was amazing and a breath of fresh air we desperately needed in the series. And then, you know, and for a lot of people, you know, Quantum was a bit too Bourne and not Bond enough. Skyfall was a bit sort of, you know, I must say, myself included, I don't really want to see Bond stood there being this brooding dude who's crying over his lost parents. Do you know what I mean? I want to see Bond being just the coolest bastard in the whole room. And for me, Spectre is the first time we've had that since Casino, really. You know, I mean, there's obviously been cool parts of it, but seeing that classic Bond on screen is something that I really wanted to see. And I think, you know, plot holes, yeah, there are some, but again, there are plot holes in pretty much every single Bond film. And, you know, some of those are undisputed classics as well, you know. So it is what it is, I think, you know. Different strokes for different folks.
All I'm going to say is I'm not going to say, oh, Spectre's shit, in it, nor am I going to say Spectre is the greatest Bond movie or a great movie in its own right. I think it's all right. I do. I think it's all right. I think I will enjoy watching it again. I think it's got some beautiful visuals. I think the performances are very, very strong, especially from MI6 Home Team. Leia Seydoux actually is growing on me. Each time I've watched it, I thought that she's better.
She makes me grow too.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and I did want to mention that whole film noir feel, that kind of Casablanca-y feel about the North Africa bit, like what she's wearing and those sort of, you know, the pastel linen colours and the sort of smoky atmosphere in the train and so on. That was beautifully done, really, really evocative and lovely. You know, I mean, if we're talking plot holes, you know, why the hell has he got a white dinner jacket on a train when he's on a mission? It's ridiculous. Of course it is. But that's Bond, and that's fantastic. Fantastic.
Nice. Well, on that note, we should wind things up because we've got the next interviewer waiting in the wings. But some interesting points, and I'm sure it will inspire much debate on the Facebook page and all that kind of stuff. So,
you know, what's interesting is I don't think I've actually ended up saying what I thought I was going to say.
Go on.
I sort of changed my mind as we've been talking. It is interesting. You've got to talk it through.
Yeah.
And I'll probably end up thinking something different tonight. Mind you, I'm going to see Cue the Music tonight up in Fleet.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Give our love to Warren and the gang.
Will do. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Cool stuff.
All right, boys.
Well, thanks for coming on the show, Simon. I'm sure we will be speaking again soon, no doubt.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for having me, boys. See you soon.
See you soon.
Cheers, Golden Voice.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ooh, some controversial views there, eh, Chris?
Definitely. It was interesting how he started not being sure to not really liking it to finishing it in a worse sort of.
I think, he talked himself down that rabbit hole and went further down into a pit of despair throughout the course of that interview. He started off being like, he was all right. In the end, he was just completely deflated and just completely empty for any love for the film, I think, wasn't he?
I felt like sending him like some flowers and a box of chocolates to cheer up.
I think he needs a cuddle. We should start a charity drive, a cuddle for Simon, because he's not having a good time with it. Bless his heart. But
it is interesting. I think he definitely made some good points, some interesting points for sure. I can see where he's coming from for the majority, but I think a lot of it is all down to interpretation. I think, no one's right, no one's wrong. It's how you look at it. And I think if someone takes something and views it in a positive way, that's their take on it. If someone does the opposite, that's their take on it. But that doesn't mean that either is right or either is wrong. It's just, that's how you feel when you watch something, isn't it? And obviously some things do change. But I mean, like we were saying earlier, it's just interesting to get that other side of the coin of someone who, when they're watching it, it isn't as taken in by it. But then that's say
absolutely. I think the sort of the name of the game is each to their own, and different strokes for different folks, in the sense that what one person likes, the next person doesn't, and that's totally fine. And everyone has a valid opinion and a valid point. Apart from Simon's, which is absolutely wrong.
Oh, poor Simon.
No, I'm only joking. No, but do you know what I mean? It is what it is. Some people would completely slate on Her Majesty's Secret Service, whereas you and I would bow down and say prayers to it every single morning for the rest of our lives.
Which is what we pretty much do.
So it is what it is, absolutely. And it's interesting to hear both sides of the coin, for sure. So there we have it. That about rounds out today's episodes of James Bond Radio. Another couple of interviews. We will, of course, be back tomorrow with 2 more interviews.
They are final interviews.
They are our final interviews, actually. Yeah, it's the last double barrel interviews of the day. And then to round out the entire 30 Days of Spectre, I'm sort of can't quite believe we actually made it through the 30 days. But not only made it through the 30 days, we actually made more than 30 episodes with these double barrel interviews. It's pretty crazy, to be honest. So obviously the final episode of the whole 30 days, I'm sure most of the JBR listeners have had enough of you and me waffling on about what we think about Spectre.
Definitely have. I've had enough.
So there you go. So it's the listener takeover on the 30th day. With all the 90-second reviews spliced together. Some people have said, well, are you going to comment on all the 90-second reviews? And that's just something at the current moment, we've had over 50 of them come in. So if we were to do that, we would have to do another 30 days, I reckon, in order to kind of get through them all. So it's going to, we'll be sort of introducing them, and then we'll do a little outro at the end, sort of giving some general thoughts, but it's going to be basically the JBR family's thoughts from beginning to end pretty much for that episode. So I'm excited. I'm really looking
forward. I'm really looking forward to that. Because obviously I know you've listened to a couple, and obviously we're going to sort of put them together, but I haven't listened to any, and I'm really looking forward just to like blasting through. So in terms of how you're slicing them together, are you literally doing it on a first come first serve, and then plotting them, or is there any sort of order?
I haven't given it as much thought yet because I haven't actually started to edit it all together. But I imagine I would just go in order of how they arrived, and
that's
just,
the best way, definitely,
and just let it kind of flow on and do what it's got to do. So it'll be interesting. So it's either going to be a complete mixed bag. It's going to be a complete shit show of everybody hates Spectre, or it's going to be this wonderful join hands and skip along through the woods. Everybody loves Spectre. I'm intrigued to see where it's going to fall on that scale.
I'm thinking the first one, I'd imagine.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. But there we go. So that about rounds out today's episodes of JBR. Of course, we will be back tomorrow with our final 2 interviews. Tomorrow we've got Mr. Steve Thorpe all the way from London, and we also have good old Mr. Jack Lugo all the way from New York City. So we'll be chatting to those 2 guys in the morning. Until then, I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright.
And we will be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.
See you tomorrow, folks.
Bye. Bye.